Laws is not here this morning with her children to do the Sabbath school lesson as she usually does. And instead, what we're going to do is tell a few stories. I hope that perhaps someday Andrea can come back and do it again. In any case, here we are. My wife and I, Janet and Frank Fournier, we're going to do some stories for you. And I'm going to begin by asking my wife to come up here and to start us off with a story.
Hi there. As you know, we lived in Africa for many years, and I just want to tell you a mission story. And this story is about one time. Let me just go into the story. One time I went into the hospital, and you know, in Africa, our hospitals are not all too good, and so I worked at Riverside Farms, and so I was the ambulance driver for a while, as well as I worked in the clinics and did mobile bush clinics. And so I got a call to go to bring somebody to the hospital. So I took my pickup and drove this person to the hospital, and on my way back, there was two ladies. They needed a ride, so I picked them up. And then, not far from there was a man and a woman and two little kids in the ditch. And he had her by the scruff of the neck, and he was beating her. And the kids were crying, and I couldn't go by, so I just stopped. And out my window, I yelled at her. I said, "Do you need a ride, madam?" And she said, "Yes." And the man let go of her, and he came over to the truck, and he was talking in one of their languages, and he was telling me that this was none of my business. I didn't have to understand the words to know what he was saying. And so I got the gist of it, and he was saying, "Go, go." And so I said, "Yeah, I'll go." And so I put the truck in reverse, and the man walked back down to his wife, and he was continuing where he left off, and so I put the truck in forward, and I headed straight for them. Now, I don't know why I did all this. I just have a hard time for the underdog, whoever's getting beat up, and so I just couldn't leave this woman being beaten up, even though it was her husband. And so I put the truck in forward, and I headed straight for him. And you know what he did? He stood behind his wife. And I said, "Yes, you coward, you can stand behind your wife." And so as I got closer, I slammed on the brakes, and now I jumped out of my truck, and I opened the back of my truck, and I said, "Get in," to the woman. And she just dove right over the tailgate. I had just lifted the top of the back, and she just dove right in. I don't know what she was hanging on, but he was pulling her by the legs, and he could not get her out of there. And the two little guys were just crying and crying. And somewhere he had a stick in his hand, and he was threatening. And so I wasn't afraid. And I said, "Yeah, you coward, now you got a stick." And so I tried to close the back, and he just stood there not knowing what to do with this white lady. And so somehow I ended up with a baby in my hand, in my arms, and he grabbed the baby, dropped the stick, grabbed the baby. I picked up the stick, and now I threatened him, now you go away. And he was angry, and he just slammed at the back of my window there, that little door, and he walked away, and he said, go. Well, I didn't think he would hurt his kids. Of course, they were his kids. But of course, I didn't think anyone would hurt his wife, but the way he was doing it. But anyway, so I went down the road a little bit, and then got out and brought the lady inside. And I said, I am going this way. When we got to the corner, she said, I am going that way. I said, okay, so I will let you off here. I gave her some money for bus, transportation, and she could go her way. And so that's kind of the end of the story. I don't know whatever happened, if she ever got back with him or what happened. But, you know, you hear so many stories today where people can walk by a crime scene and just walk away from it. But the Lord wants us to help people, and I could never, ever do that. I've been in many situations where I've had to put myself on the line where, you know, and it comes without thinking, and it's the Lord who, I had no fear whatsoever. It's the Lord who takes care of you and protects you. If you're out there helping other people, yeah, sometimes you might get hurt, but the Lord is there with you, and He knows. Thank you.
That's why I married her, to protect me. I got a story to tell you also. One time we had come from Africa back to Canada on a 3-month furlough, and we crossed Canada all the way to the west coast. We spent a lot of time, because our girls were over there, and we spent a lot of time with different people. Now you understand, if you're going to be on vacation for 3 months, you're always living with someone else in someone else's home, and that becomes rather tiring. And so we were, after 3 months, on our way back to Africa. I had to drive all the way across Canada to southern Ontario, and then from there planning to drive all the way to Tennessee, where we were going to take our flight back home from Atlanta, Georgia. In any case, one of my daughters lived in Tennessee, and I was hoping that we could go to her house and spend the last week of our vacation just resting. I was tired of vacationing. Can you imagine? In any case, that's what it was. And we had gotten to the south of Ontario, and once we got to the south of Ontario in Canada, my wife decided that she would call her sister, who lives in the north of Ontario. Well, I didn't think there'd be any harm in that, and so she called her sister, and they're having a good conversation. We're saying goodbye. We're going back to Africa. And then finally, her sister said, "Where are you?" And my wife said, "We're in southern Ontario." "Oh, you're in southern Ontario. Can you come up here?" And I'm thinking, wait a minute here. 8 hours north to come back 8 hours south and not be any further advanced than we are? This is ridiculous. We don't want to do that. Yeah, but she says, Anna Chervinsky needs a ride to Florida. And Anna Chervinsky is 80 years old. Her husband is now dead. She drives a big Buick. She needs to go down to Florida. She has 2 homes. She spends the winter in Florida. She spends the summer in Canada. It's the fall now. It's time to go back to Florida. She's 80 years old, and to travel that by herself is hard. Can you come up and get her? And it's just like, oh no, I don't want to come up. It's 8 hours north before I come back 8 hours south. Oh, this is ridiculous. I'm losing time. But there is a problem, because Anna Chervinsky and Uncle Johnny, that was her husband before he died. That was still his name, I guess. Anyway, they had supported our ministries before. They were semi-wealthy people. They had helped us, and I felt indebted. I had to go. And so here we go. We drive 8 hours north. We get to Anna Chervinsky's. We help her pack her big old Buick. And then in the morning, we take off from there and head for 8 hours south, only to be where we were originally. But now we have 2 cars. My wife is driving one car. I'm driving her big old Buick, an old Buick. Anyways, and then we made our way all the way to Tennessee. Not in one day. I don't think we did. I don't remember. All I remember is that we got to my daughter's on a Friday afternoon, and the Sabbath would be the next day. And so we spent the Sabbath with my daughter in Tennessee, and then I had to think of driving Anna all the way to Miami, which somebody told me could not be done in one day. But I remember Saturday night after the Sabbath, I got Anna there, and I said, Anna, listen, they're telling me that I can't go to Miami in one day from here. I'm telling you, I am going to Miami in one day from here. So we're leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning. You be ready to go, because we're going to make it in one day. Okay, and so that's what it was. We did make it in one day. But here's the story. It was 100 degrees. It had been 100 degrees for several days. And Anna's big Buick, that big old boat, had no air conditioning. Who needs air conditioning in Canada? And so here we go. We've got the windows down. It's 100 degrees. And we're driving down the road. And I never slowed down past 80 miles an hour. And you know how it is when you're driving windows open. It goes all day long. And it's tiring, I think. Anyway, we got approximately halfway. I would think it was approximately halfway. We got right between Tampa on the right and Orlando on the left, just on Highway 75. And Anna turned to me and she said, "Where are we going?" And I thought, Anna, what do you mean, where are we going? I'm bringing you home to Miami. She said, "I don't have a home in Miami. I live in Toronto." Well, she didn't live in Toronto. I knew that much. And I knew she had a home in Miami, but I didn't know where she lived. And now she didn't know where she lived. Now, what am I going to do with that? I didn't know what to do. And you can imagine I began praying at this time. And I thought to myself, I am not turning around. I can't drive her all the way back to Canada. Now it's going to take me another 2-3 days. Oh, man, that was such a problem, I thought. But the only thing I could do is keep on going forward until I found her house somehow. How am I going to find her house anyway? I really didn't know. But as we traveled, things only got worse, because she began to cry. And she was crying and crying and calling, "Mama, I am being abducted. I don't know where he's taking me. I don't know who it is." And then sometimes she would try to open the door. She threatened to jump out, and she was mad at me. She had been paying all the gas. She had been paying all the food and all the toll roads and all the rest. And now she refused to pay anything. And I didn't know if I had enough money to get her to Miami in my pocket, because there's so many toll roads in Florida. And so we kept on going, in any case. Now I'm paying the toll roads, and I'm paying the gas, and I'm paying for everything. And she is angry with me. And at one point I says, "Anna, can I see the papers in your purse, so I can maybe figure out where she lived?" And she went, "No way. You're not going to get into my purse. You're abducting me, and we're enemies now, you understand?" And this, in spite of the fact that she's 80 years old, she's a very strong woman. I knew that, because some years earlier, she had asked me to carry a hide-a-bed. You know those sofas that have a bed hidden in them? 3 flights of stairs. I can hardly carry that hide-a-bed on a flat level. Anyway, So we're carrying, her and I, we're carrying a hide-a-bed up 3 flights of stairs. And if I remember correctly, she carried the hide-a-bed, and me too. That's how strong this gal was. And so she was not about to let me into her crazy purse. And I was not about to get in there somehow, and anyhow. Well, in any case, we got into Miami around 9 o'clock at night. And because I knew that she lived in a trailer park, I figured there would be no trailer park in the middle of Miami. That didn't make any sense. So I would circle the city all around trying to find a trailer park, hoping she would recognize something, and she recognized nothing. Nothing at all. At one point we got to a four-way stop, and there was a light, and there was a gas station on the right, and she said to me, "Go into the gas station." And I'm like, "Why?" "Well, maybe they can tell me where I live." And I thought, "Oh, that's a great idea. Why don't we go in there and they can tell you where you live?" I had a plan, you understand. So I drove in. I said, "Go ask them where you live." And so she leaves the car. And as she leaves the car, I put my hand in her purse, and she's coming back. She changed her mind. And anyways, all I got was a little card. A little card, just, people have cards. And all I could do is put it in my pocket because she was coming back. And then that was it. There's nothing more I could do. In any case, we kept driving around and driving around. At one point, I saw an empty lot, and I thought to myself, if I parked the car here, I could just walk away. But then I thought, well, I can't do that. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm a Christian. I can't do that. And so I decided to stick with her. And we drove till midnight, just go round and round and round. And we ended up in the middle of Miami Beach, where all these tall hotels were. I parked the car on the side of the road, and I said, "Anna, make your bed in the back seat. I'll make my bed in the front seat, and we'll figure this out in the morning." And she made her bed, and she laid down, and I'm sitting at the steering wheel, and I am so stressed that I can't lay down. I mean, I can't, it's just, I want to cry. There's nobody to talk to. And we didn't have cell phones in those days. I can't even call my wife and see if she could call her sister or something. There's nothing I can do. It's midnight anyway. Sunday night, midnight. And so eventually, I saw 4 guys coming from a hotel, bellhops, you understand? And they're coming from the hotel. They walk all the way to the street, and they light up cigarettes. And I said to myself, well, whatever you say to yourself, I decided to go and talk to these guys. So I walked over. I'm walking towards these guys, and they're looking at me like strange because they can see I'm heading right for them. I'm going to talk to them. And I look strange somehow, maybe. I don't know. And when I got to them, I had to just tell my story. I just needed to tell somebody my story. And I'm telling them what is happening, and I'm telling them I've got no hint of where to go except for this little card. And this little card was a dry cleaner's card, And I said, a dry cleaner, they're not open until the morning, of course. They don't work all night in a dry cleaner. And besides that, they don't work on Sunday, so I have to wait till tomorrow morning. And one of the guys said, "Let me see that card." So I gave him the card, and he says, "Oh, I know this place. It's 8 miles up this road. It'll be on your left-hand side, and it's open all night, 24 hours a day. As a matter of fact, it says so on the card right there. Just read it." And so they're open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, a dry cleaner. And I thought, how weird is that? And so I grabbed the card, and I ran back to the car, and I say to Anna, "You stay in the back seat. Don't move. I've got an errand to run." And I got on that street where I was supposed to be. 8 miles I went down the road, and on the left there was a dry cleaner. There it was. I went into the dry cleaners, and I said to the lady, does the name Anna Chervinsky mean anything to you? No. Well, I said, she lives in a trailer park. This card was in her purse, and I'm trying to find her home. And the woman said, "This is a trailer park." We're right in the trailer park. I said, it is? Well, this is wonderful. I said, why don't you go into, do you have a registry? I mean, we're all with the names of all the people in this trailer park? She says, of course I do. I said, really? Well, you want to check the name Anna Chervinsky and see if she lives in this trailer park? And she went and checked the name, and guess what? She was there. And so she gave me direction on how to get to her trailer. When I got to her trailer, I said to Anna, Anna, I need your keys. And I'm not playing any games. I need your keys. And she gave me the keys. So it was a handful of keys like this. I don't know why she would have so many keys. In any case, I went up to the trailer and I began using key after key after key, and none of the keys fit. And all that was left after I was done with the whole pack of keys was a little bitty key. I mean, a key so small that you might use it on a very little lock or something like that. And I thought to myself, well, that's not going to open any house. But never mind, I tried. And guess what? That stupid little key opened the house. Yeah. And then the job was to get Anna into the house. It's just like, Anna, come on in here. I'm not going up there. I said, Anna, you need to come up here and see what we've got here. And finally, she came out of the car, and she went up the door and opened the door. She wouldn't go in. She just looked inside. And then she said, hey, wait a minute. That's my picture. That's my couch. That's my house. So finally, we went into the house. I found the master bedroom. I escorted her there, shut the door. I found some place to rest. And I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and she was already up, walking around, looking around at the whole thing, looking very puzzled in all of this. And she remembered how she had treated me the day before. Somehow it came to her brain. So she went and got her purse, and she took $250 out of her purse, and she gave it to me. And then she said, you want me to drive you to the bus station? No, don't drive me to the bus station. I'll find the bus station. Thank you very much. And that was the end of that story. Except it wasn't the end of that story. Really, Anna died 4 months later. You see, she is diabetic, and she's living by herself. And because she was partly losing her mind, her memory, then one day she forgot to take her medicine. She went into a coma, I suppose, and passed away. She was 80 years old. The Lord helped me. Now let me tell you what. There was never a time in my life where I felt so desperate as I felt that day, and so frustrated, and so sure that there was no solution to my problem. Just because I had no solution, does that mean that God had no solution? I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed all day, but the reason I was so frustrated is that because I thought, there's just no way to solve this problem. There's just no way for me to find her house. Did God have a way? God had a way. And God has a way to solve all of our problems. Your problem, my problem. Yeah. And you know, seeing that I have a minute or two, I found a bus. Now remember, it's 100 degrees, and I'm hot, and all I've got is a very light summer shirt, short sleeves. I'm not carrying anything with me. And I get on the bus, and we travel up into the night to Jacksonville, Florida. It took all day to get to Jacksonville, Florida. And it was raining in Jacksonville, Florida. Picked up another bus. I sat down in the bus, and we started going towards Georgia, because that's where we were going. Not Georgia, but yeah, it was really Ringgold, Georgia, where the bus would land. And so it was raining outside, and would you know it? It was dripping on me inside the bus. And he had air conditioning on in the bus, and I got wetter and wetter and wetter and wetter. There was no other seat in the bus, and the air conditioning was on, and I began to be cold and colder and colder until I was shaking. I was just shaking, and I couldn't help it. Now, there was a a nice girl sitting beside me, kind of a big girl sitting beside me, and she had a blanket. And every now and again, I would try to sneak in under her blanket, just a little corner, you understand? To try to warm up a little bit. And she would go, wouldn't let me in at all. And the bus driver wouldn't turn the air conditioner down. And every time it finally came to be day, and every time he stopped the bus, I'd walk into the sunshine, try to warm up, and I was shaking, and I was just shaking. Anyway, I did survive this thing. And it just goes to show you, life has all kinds of adventure for someone who'll record them, I suppose. That's my story for now. And I'll invite my wife to come back and tell another story.
Okay, so while we were living at Riverside in Zambia, Riverside had a river launch that went up the Kafui River. And we were going on a trip. And this was a trip that we would go upriver and then turn around and then come back and do baptisms all the way downriver, as there was little outposts that would do Bible studies with the people. And so we had gone 2.5 days upriver. And then this small boat comes and pulls up beside the Bwenzi, and which is a river launch. And the guy tells our captain that there's a lady in their village that has been burnt, and she needs help, so can we please help? So we decided, okay, and he had said that she had some burns. So I had, one of those little pocket pouches, purse pouches that you wear around your waist, and I put some burn cream and some gauze and some gloves, and so, but it was rainy season, and so we pulled over onto the bank. And it was like a steep incline up into the village. And it was just all mud. And so it was slipping and sliding and getting up there. And so we got up there, and they bring us into a hut where you have to, it's a dark little hut, and you have to bend down to get in. And everything is damp, and outside, these people on the river are all fishermen, and they have boards up on top of posts, and on those posts they have fish drying. Well, during the rainy season, it's really hard to dry fish. They kind of half rot, half dry, and it stinks. And so anyway, we go into the hut, and at first you can't see anything. Everything is so dark. And there's the mother and the sister. And so they bring me to this where there's a mat on the floor. And there's a girl laying on the mat. And there's just, I don't know if you know what a shitenge is or a conga. It's just a thin piece of cotton laying on top of the mat, and there's this girl with another shitenga over her. She's been laying there for 3 days, just rotting, and it smelled like it. And so the mother shows me first her elbow. The whole elbow, everything was burnt. It was just a mess. It was really deep, and all the skin was missing. And, in Africa, you use what you got. And so they have these Fabrine bags that flour comes in or maize comes in, and it's just a woven kind of a plastic material. And so they cut that out, and they use those for bathing and doing dishes and scrubbing and for face cloths. And so the mother sends the daughter to go get some water, and one of those. She comes back, and she starts scrubbing on the girl's elbow because they had covered her with ash Now, ash is sterile. It's not like charcoal, but it's sterile. But this girl was laying on a wet mat, and the shitenge was wet. Everything was wet. And I knew that because I knelt down beside her, and I said, no, 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 don't, no, I can see. No more scrubbing. I was appalled by that scrubbing on these burns. And then her thigh, the whole of her buttock here was, I don't know, the whole of her buttock was, I don't know if you've ever cooked a roast pork. I wasn't always an Adventist, but if you cook roast pork and you had the rind on the bottom, the rind became very hard, like this. And you could go like this on her buttock. It was burnt. And all around was big pockets of oozy, wet. It was awful. And her heel, the back of her leg, right by her heel, up here, was so deep, all the way down to her heel, and a little bit under. It was really burnt badly. And I said, okay, I need to go back to the boat and talk to the people. I said, I have nothing to help her with, so I will be right back. So I went out, got some air, fresh air, and went to the boat. And I said to the captain, I said, if we don't help this girl very soon, we won't have to help her. She will die here. And I said, she really needs help. And we need to take her to a hospital. So he said, okay. So a whole team came up, and they brought a board, a wide board, the plank that they use from the boat to the shore. And so they put the little dinghy that we have between the big boat and the shore. And so we put we would walk on that. And then so they had the girl on it, so that with the dinghy there, we got into the dinghy, and then we got into the big boat, and we just put her on the floor right there. We put a foam mattress down, and we put her on the floor. And a storm was coming. It was getting dark out, and the sky was black, and there was thunder and lightning, and we had our antenna up because we needed the radio, and to try get help for this girl, telling them we were coming back, and so we brought the girl in, and we covered her with a blanket, and everybody was busy trying to get this antenna down and not get electrocuted, and so they got it down, and then we started. The night was so black, we couldn't tell if we were coming or going, which way we were going on the river. We couldn't see anything. And so as we were going down the river, I said, are we going in the right direction? It feels like we're going the wrong way. He said, I don't know anymore. And he said, I think I'm just going to have to pull over, and we will, tie down, anchor down, and we will stay here overnight and go in the morning when we have some light. And so in the morning, well, during the night, you know, in these little boats, you don't have so much room. The captain slept on the, like on the dashboard. Okay, there was that wide, and that's where he slept. And the pastor, who was going to do all the baptisms, slept in the bunk above us. the bottom bunk was a wider bunk, and it had room for two, so my husband and myself slept there. And did we have one more guy? We might have had one more person with us, and he would have slept in the back part because there was two bunks there. And during the night, it was so hot, we had to close up the Buenzi because of the rain and the mosquitoes. Yeah, malaria, mosquitoes like crazy. And so we had put this, had to close the big doors. And so during the night, the rain had stopped, and the pastor said, he had seen me. I was sitting up, and I had my little flashlight, and I was just going over these burns on this girl, just looking at them, and the smell in the boat was horrendous. I couldn't sleep. It was sickening. It was nauseating, and I felt nauseated. And then he said, "Can you open those doors?" And I said, "Sure." So I thought I could anyway. So you had to climb up onto the wall of the boat and stand there and unlock the doors way up here. And so I tried and tried, and I couldn't do it. The lock was really tight. And so finally the pastor says, I'll do it. And so he jumps down, and he gets it, and we open up, and fresh air comes into the boat. And so we put on the netting over the doorways, and we're in there. And so we go the next day, and I said, we had we had gone downriver all the next day, and I said, we haven't done anything for this girl, and her burns are really bad, and her skin is rotting. And I said, if we don't do something, we may as well have left her in the village. And this was a 17-year-old girl. She was an epileptic. She fell into the fire when she was having a seizure. She was pregnant. And life was tough. Life was tough. And so she was not married. And so I started with cleaning one wound after another and debriding all this loose flesh and all this stuff that was loose all around it, and that hard stuff, there's nothing you could do with that. That was just charred on there. And so we bandaged her, we cleaned her up, we bandaged her, and took everything we had on the Buenzi. Her wounds were severe. The one on her buttock was like this. And just, so we went, and finally the next day we got to where a vehicle could come down to the river, because there was no roads along the river. So a vehicle could come down to the river and pick her up. And so they brought her to a hospital. And then a few days later, after I went to the hospital to visit her, and she just cried and cried. She was hungry, for one. There was, in the hospitals, you have to bring family. If you don't have family to come and cook for you, you're in trouble. If you don't have money, you're in trouble. So if you don't have money to be able to buy something, or somebody to go buy it for you, it's a different world. And so so we just left her with hope and courage, and we prayed for her, and they were going to do skin grafts and everything else, and I never seen this girl again, except that I heard that she finally got out of the hospital. She was doing well, and she had her baby. She didn't lose it, and so we were thankful that we were able to help this young lady. Life is so different for some people out there, and so hard. If you think you have it hard, think again, because I can't get that new car, or I can't get that new blouse, or we're just making ends meet. Hey, you are making ends meet, but some people don't have two ends to meet, and so I'm very thankful that the Lord has given me these opportunities in life to be able to go out there and help people. Thank you.
Well, there you go. That was story time for another Sabbath, and we hope that you will join us again next week. Let's have a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for being with us and for giving us adventures in life where we can share with other people how the Lord has led for us, through us, and for us to have an opportunity to be a blessing to those that have less than we do. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. We'll all be meeting in a few minutes again for the 11 o'clock service, and I will be